So anyway, Maya and I had just finished a 3-day loop in the Olympic Peninsula. This was 2013. I remember the year because my old white Toyota 4Runner was still running, and the CD player was stuck on one album, An Awesome Wave by Alt J. The track Breeze Blocks kept looping. We were exhausted, but in that good way, you know? The kind where your legs ache, but your head is finally quiet. We'd packed up camp late, and by the time we hit the road back to Seattle, the forest was already swallowing what little light was left. I mean, proper dark. The kind you only get out there, where the trees stand so thick the sky just disappears. The GPS rerouted us off the 101 to save maybe 15 minutes. The new road cut straight through old growth, and the air coming through the vents smelled of damp earth and pine. There were no street lights, no other headlights, just our own pushing shadows around. I didn't know it then, but the second we turned off the main highway to save 15 minutes, the road had already decided to give us something we'd never be able to leave behind. We'd been driving like that for about half an hour, barely talking, just letting that same song spin. And then the headlights caught a shape up ahead, a man, standing right on the edge of the shoulder, arm out, thumb up. He wasn't wearing a pack, which I should have noticed. He just stood there in a dark hiking jacket like he'd materialized out of the trees. Maya straightened up immediately. She told me to keep driving, whispered it, really, with her hands suddenly pressing into my arm. But I was already easing off the gas. You see someone stranded miles from anything. Your first instinct isn't fear, it's pity. I figured he was just some guy who'd had a fight with his girlfriend and got kicked out of the car. Stupid, I know. I slowed the 4Runner to a stop, and the gravel under the tires made a sound like a long, slow whisper. He jogged up to my window, and I rolled it down just enough to talk. Up close, he looked normal. Mid-30s maybe, with a few days of stubble and boots that had seen real trail miles. He smiled in that tired, apologetic way that disarms you. He said his name was Jake. His car had died a mile or so back, and his phone had no signal. He just needed a ride to the top of the next hill, where he could get a bar of reception and call a tow. He wasn't asking for much. I glanced at Maya. She didn't say a word, but her hand was digging into my leg, her knuckles white. I knew what she was thinking. We just listened to an episode of This American Life on the drive out. Something about people not trusting their instincts. I guess I should have listened harder. But I looked at Jake again, and I told myself he was just a guy with a dead battery. But yeah, I mean, he looked normal. I unlocked the back door and let him climb in behind me. He settled into the seat, and a smell drifted forward. Something sour, like old sweat dried into fabric. The kind that says someone's been out in the woods longer than they planned. The door closed and we pulled back onto the road. Those first few seconds were quiet, just the hum of the engine and the sound of gravel occasionally pinging against the undercarriage. I tried to fill the silence. I asked him where he was headed. He said he'd been camping too, but his trip got cut short. I remember thinking, well, that's something we have in common. I mean, I was trying to make it all feel normal. I was trying to convince myself this was just a small kindness, the kind of thing you'd hope someone would do for you. But Maya never let go of my leg. The air inside the car got heavy fast. The back seat of a 4Runner isn't huge, but it felt like he was sitting right behind my ear. He shifted and I heard the rustle of his jacket, that stiff, synthetic sound that carries in a tight space. Maya had a can of Dr. Pepper in the cup holder, and every few seconds it would rattle against the plastic. That tiny noise was the only thing grounding me. Jake started talking, but it wasn't the kind of conversation you expect from a stranger you just rescued. He said something about how the world is split into people who take and people who pay. That nobody really gets anything for free. I mean, it didn't make a lot of sense. I remember letting out a short laugh, the kind you use when you're not sure if someone is joking. I told him that sounded deep for a guy who just needed a cell signal. He didn't laugh back, and then he said something else. He asked if we ever felt like we owed the forest a debt. Like if we took a good memory from it, the woods would eventually ask for payment. Maya's can of Dr. Pepper went silent. I told myself he was just an odd loner, someone who'd spent too much time out here without talking to people. His mind was just circling strange thoughts. He was rambling. That's all it was. But his voice wasn't rambling. It was low and steady, like he'd said those words before. That's when he pointed ahead, past the windshield. He said we could let him out early. There was a turnoff just before the hill, an unmarked road that led down to an old lumber mill. He said it would be faster for him to cut through there. I looked at where he was pointing. There were no lights, just a gap in the trees and an old iron gate, rusted and bent sideways in the dirt. I slowed the 4Runner as we approached the turnoff. The old lumber mill road looked like a scar in the tree line. There was a rusted iron gate, bent sideways, half buried in dead ferns. No lights, no signs, just black. The gravel under the tires made that crack sound, sharp and uneven. I think I was still trying to figure out how to politely say no when the whole atmosphere inside the car just shifted. Jake's voice changed. It dropped into something flat and cold, like a switch had been flipped. He said to stop the car and give him my wallet and my phone. Then he told me to make Maya get out of the vehicle. I froze. I mean, what do? You don't expect that. My brain scrambled for a second, trying to turn it into a misunderstanding. Maybe this was a joke, a prank, something that would end with a laugh and a story we'd tell at parties. But then I heard it, that metallic sound, a click, the kind of sound a folding knife makes when it locks open. And then I felt the point of it pressing against my side, just below my ribs. I couldn't see it, but I knew exactly what it was. Maya made a noise I'd never heard her make before, a kind of strangled whimper. My foot was still on the brake. My hands were still on the wheel, but everything else had stopped making sense. So I floored it. No thinking, my body moved before my brain caught up. I slammed the gear shift into drive and stomped the gas pedal. The engine roared, and the 4Runner lunged forward like an animal. I heard a snap, the sound of something heavy hitting the door frame, and then the gravel outside. Jake must have been halfway out, maybe trying to pull Maya, but the sudden jerk launched him backward. The passenger door was still wide open. The wind howled through the cabin, grabbing at everything. Maya was screaming, and I was just holding the wheel, driving blind down that dark track. I didn't look back. In the rearview mirror, there was just motion and then nothing. I reached across and yanked the door shut, and then there was silence. Just the engine and our breathing. The handle on her side was bent, dangling loose. It wouldn't latch properly anymore. I kept telling myself we were safe now. He just fell. We left him. It was over. But my hands were shaking so hard I could barely steer. We didn't stop until we found a tiny town maybe 20 minutes later. A gas station with one flickering sign. I killed the engine and grabbed my phone, but my fingers were useless. I kept pressing the wrong buttons. Maya was crying in that shaky, breathless way, saying over and over that she told me that she should have made me listen. Emergency services picked up, but the signal was terrible. The operator kept cutting in and out. When the cops finally arrived, they parked behind us and walked over with heavy footsteps on the wet asphalt. They checked the car, wrote things down, asked the same questions a dozen times, and then one of the officers sighed, like he'd seen this before. He told us they found Jake's car. It was parked down the road, engine working fine, full tank of gas. He hadn't broken down. He'd driven himself there and waited. I just stood there, realizing we weren't random victims. We were chosen the moment our headlights touched his silhouette. The station they took us to smelled like stale coffee from an old pot that had been sitting on the burner too long. And that smell, I don't know, it made the whole thing feel even more pointless. 3 days passed. The police recovered my wallet, but the phone was gone, dumped somewhere in the woods. They told us we were lucky, that we'd handled it well. I guess on paper we did. But safety is a weird thing. After that night, I couldn't sit behind the wheel without feeling the phantom pressure of a knife against my ribs. We sold the 4Runner a month later. I couldn't even list it myself. I asked my brother to do it. I bought a Ford Explorer because it felt different, but it didn't matter. Some nights at 3 in the morning, I'd be awake, just sitting in the living room in complete silence. No TV, no music, just listening. I looked up Jake's face later on a public records database. He'd been charged before, armed robbery, assault. He knew exactly what he was doing. But the thing that really hollows me out isn't his record. It's the thought that if I'd hit the gas half a second later, we wouldn't have been found out there. We just happened to survive. Pure chance. And I still hear the gravel. I guess I'll always hear that damn gravel under the tires, like a whisper that never ends. So anyway, back in 2008, my buddies and I decided to head out into the Tonto National Forest for a long weekend. We piled into my beat-up Toyota 4Runner with too much cheap beer and not enough common sense. I remember the air that evening was thick with wood smoke and the sharp bite of pine. The good kind, the kind that makes you feel like you've finally escaped the real world. We had a portable speaker blasting The Killers, Mr. Brightside on repeat, and we were all laughing too loud, throwing sticks into the fire. It was the last time I remember feeling completely, stupidly safe. I had no idea that the sound of sniffing would follow me long after we packed up the tents. We set up 2 tents a few feet apart. Mine was the smaller one, just big enough for me and my sleeping bag. Jake and Mike shared the bigger one. We stayed up maybe till midnight, telling dumb stories and watching the embers die. Eventually, the beer ran low and our eyelids got heavy. I crawled into my tent, zipped it up tight, and passed out almost instantly. Everything was quiet except for the usual forest sounds, a distant owl, the wind shaking the pine needles. You know, the perfect night. It's almost funny now remembering how peaceful it was because just a few hours later, I'd learned what real silence feels like. The kind that comes right before something awful. I woke up to a sound I couldn't place at first. It was wet and rhythmic, like someone with a bad cold inhaling deeply, right against the fabric of my tent. That sniffing was so close I could hear the slight rustle of nylon every time it moved. I froze. You know when your brain just empties out and you're reduced to pure instinct? That was me. I didn't even grab my mag light, which was right there in my hand practically. I just lay there listening as that sniffing traveled slowly around the perimeter of my tent. And then, like it moved towards Jake and Mike's tent, I heard them go dead quiet too. Nobody whispered, nobody moved. I told myself it was probably just a curious black bear, nosing around for our food, but we'd hung the bags way off in a tree. So then I thought maybe a bear wouldn't be so methodical, you know? The sniffing stopped right at the entrance of their tent, and I swear I could hear breathing. Deep, deliberate breaths that didn't sound like any animal I knew. I lay there, just waiting for it to leave, hoping it would just move on. But yeah, it didn't leave. Instead, the sniffing was replaced by something way worse. Heavy footsteps. Slow, deliberate bipedal steps that circled our tents in a wide arc. Then a pause. Then another circle. The silence between those footsteps was the loudest thing I've ever experienced. My phone said 3:17 a.m., and of course there was no signal. I remember, I guess, trying to rationalize it, thinking maybe some idiot from another campsite got lost and was wandering around, but deep down I knew. You don't walk circles around a stranger's tent at 3 in the morning unless you're looking for a way in. I could hear Jake stirring inside his tent. He whispered, "I'm going out there. I can't take this." We all told him in a frantic hushes to stay put, but he was already pulling on his boots. I could hear the determination in his voice even though it was shaking. I guess the fear had just turned into something else for him. Anger, maybe. We all just had to watch. He grabbed his mag light, and through the fabric I saw the faint glow click on. I wanted to yell at him to stop, but the words died in my throat. He took a deep, shaky breath, unzipped the tent in one violent yank, and then he was out, screaming into the night with the flashlight beam carving a wild path into the darkness. And then, like Jake just exploded out of that tent. His scream cut through everything, and the flashlight beam sliced wildly into the black. For a split second, I saw nothing but trees. Then the light stopped, dead still, on a figure. A tall man in a dark flannel shirt, standing maybe 20 feet away. He didn't flinch. He didn't raise an arm to shield his eyes. He just stood there staring right at Jake, with this grin, not a normal smile. Wide, too wide, like his face was stretching. The beam caught something metallic glinting at his belt. A buckle, or maybe something else. I could smell the damp earth he'd been standing on for hours. That wet, heavy scent carried on the air. Then he slowly turned. He didn't run. He just pivoted, calm as you like, and walked into the tree line. The darkness swallowed him up in seconds. Jake didn't move. The flashlight stayed fixed on that spot. Nobody said a word. I kept thinking it had to be a prank, some sick bastard trying to scare campers. But I couldn't make my mouth form the words. All the bravado just leaked out of us, replaced by a silence so thick it pressed on my ears. Jake stumbled back into his tent, and I don't think any of us breathed properly again until dawn. But yeah, the rest of that night, we all crammed into one tent. Nobody slept. Every little rustle outside made muscles tense. I just stared at the nylon, waiting for that sniffing to start again. I mean, you know that feeling when you're so exhausted but your body won't let go? That was us. When the first gray light finally bled through the trees, we unzipped the tent and stepped out. The air smelled of damp earth and something sour, maybe fear, maybe sweat, I don't know. The place was trashed. Sleeping bags yanked out, backpacks turned inside out, clothes scattered. But nothing was taken. Not the wallets, not the phones. And then we saw the footprints. Deep, clear timberland boot prints in the mud, walking perfect circles around both tents, over and over. They never broke the pattern. The food we'd hung was untouched. That's when it sank in. This wasn't an animal. This was a person who spent hours out here, just circling. We tried to tell ourselves it was a ranger or some off-the-grid hermit, maybe harmless, just strange. I guess we needed that hope to function. We packed up in complete silence, barely looking at each other. Nobody said what we all were thinking, that we were being examined, cataloged, and that maybe we weren't meant to leave. So anyway, we drove straight to the ranger station. I guess I expected them to roll their eyes, but the ranger listened, his face getting tighter and tighter. He made a call, and soon a sheriff's deputy arrived. They asked us to lead them back. And then, while we waited, a search team swept a neighboring campsite about half a mile away. They found a tent, an old thing, sagging and mildewed, and the smell of rot hit you before you even got close. Inside, laid out neat as a display, was a hunting knife and a coil of rope. Nothing else. No sleeping bag, no ID, no trash. Just those two items, waiting. The deputy came back and told us, voice real quiet, that something similar had happened back in 2005. Same setup, same items. They never found the guy. That was the moment the floor dropped out of my stomach. All those hours of silence in the woods, and we'd been breathing the same air as someone who'd done this before. I kept replaying that grin, the way he walked away so slow, like he knew we weren't going anywhere. The cops assured us it was probably just a transient who didn't want to fight, but I saw the unease behind their eyes. We gave our statements and left, and I haven't been back to the woods since. Months passed. I tried to bury it. I stopped camping, stopped even looking at pictures of forests. I thought distance would fix it. But yeah. On the night of October 12th, 2009, a year and a half later, I was in my ground floor apartment. I'd cracked the bedroom window for some air, and then I heard it. That wet, rhythmic sniffing right outside, moving along the wall. My blood turned to ice. It was the exact same sound, no mistaking it. I told myself it was an opossum or a raccoon, just a coincidence. That's what you do. But the sniffing came closer to the window, paused, and then I heard the soft crush of damp earth, like something heavy shifting its weight. I called 911, voice barely a whisper. Police came, swept the yard, found nothing. But when the sun came up, I checked the flower bed under my window. Pressed deep into the dirt, right below where I'd been sleeping, was a single boot print. Big, heavy tread, just like the ones from Arizona. Nobody was ever caught. No explanation. Now every night I triple-check the locks and listen for that sound. I don't camp anymore, you know, and I don't think I'll ever sleep with an open window again. I still think about that morning. The faded red Subaru Outback sat at the trailhead, its busted CD player stuck on Modest Mouse for the 100th time. That floaty guitar riff was the last normal sound I remember. 2014, I'd wanted to disconnect, you know? By day 3 in the San Juan backcountry, I was so deep that the world outside didn't exist. The smell of pine was thick and clean, and my legs were on autopilot. I mean, you know that kind of tired where your body just goes and your mind shuts up? But yeah, I was in that zone. I hadn't seen another soul in over 24 hours, and that was fine. The trail curved around a giant granite face, and the silence was perfect. Then I heard it, a sharp cry, human-shaped, bouncing off the rock. For a split second, I thought, hawk, or maybe a marmot, but it came again, a woman's voice twisted in pain. That's the thing about the backcountry. When you finally hear a voice other than your own, your first instinct is never to run. It's always to help. My boots scraped the dirt as I picked up speed, my pack thumping with every step. The cry had come from just around the bend. I was sure of it. The air, which had felt so fresh, suddenly felt a little colder. I didn't grab my bear spray, didn't even think. I just sprinted toward the sound, straight into the switchback, where the shadows swallowed the trail whole. The trail opened up, and there she was. A woman, mid-40s maybe, crumpled against the trunk of a fallen aspen. The first thing that hit me was her jacket, a bright purple North Face shell that looked brand new. It seemed wrong out there, you know? She was clutching her right calf, knuckles white. When she looked up, her face was a mess of panic and dirt. "Please," she gasped, "a snake, a rattler, got me right on the calf. I can't feel my leg. Please, you have to help me. I mean, when someone screams for help like that, you don't stand around analyzing." I dropped my pack so fast the water bottle clanged against a rock. I yanked my t-shirt over my head, the cold mountain air prickling my skin. I knelt down beside her and the smell of damp earth and crushed pine needles rose up. So anyway, I'm on my knees, you know, like an idiot, already forming a strip of cotton to use as a tourniquet. My mind was racing, but my hands were on autopilot. She kept her head low, whimpering, her shoulders shaking. I asked where the snake went, and she just moaned, said it slid back into the rocks. Probably a western diamondback, I figured. They're quick and mean. I tried to see the bite, but her hands were clamped over the spot so tight I couldn't make out a wound. No swelling, no blood. I told myself she was in shock, that the venom was already working. That's what I wanted to believe. I was about to wrap the shirt above her knee when I noticed how quiet it had gotten. No birds, no wind, just her ragged breathing. Then came a sound I can't quite describe. A soft, wet hiss, close, right by my neck. I froze. I thought, snake? It had to be the snake coming back for another strike. But the hiss wasn't a snake. I should have known, but I didn't move. I just knelt there, one hand on her leg, the other holding the shirt, and that hiss was all I could hear. I never heard the bite. Instead, I felt it, a sharp, cold sting on the right side of my neck, just below the ear. It wasn't a bug bite. It was a deep, spreading cold, like liquid ice pushing into my veins. I slapped my neck, and my hand came back with a tiny red dot, just a pinprick. I remember thinking, bee sting, must be allergic. That was the lie I told myself. The woman's whimpering stopped like a switch had been flipped. Her head came up, slow, and her eyes met mine. They were completely dry. No tears, no pain, just calm, steady. I'm looking at her, trying to process, but the world had already started to tilt. I mean, the sky was right there, so blue, and then it just slid sideways. You know when you're falling in a dream? Like that. My body felt heavy, wrong. I tried to stand, but my legs were made of wet sand. She reached into the sleeve of that purple jacket and pulled out a small, silver veterinary syringe. The plastic was clear, 10 cc's. I could see the plunger still depressed a little, a tiny droplet of clear liquid at the tip. It was so clinical, so out of place in all that dirt and pine. A metallic taste coated my tongue, sharp and sour. The forest had gone dead silent. No wind, no birds, no hiss. Just the sound of my own breathing, ragged and slow. She didn't say a word. She just watched me, that needle in her hand, waiting. I tried to push myself up, but my arms gave out. The blue sky started to fade at the edges. I remember thinking I should be panicking, but it all felt so far away, like it was happening to someone else. The silver of the syringe glinted in the sun, and her eyes never left mine. Calm, cold. The world narrowed to a pinhole, and then everything went black. I came back in pieces. First was the smell, rot, like something dead and wet deep in the forest. Then the rough bark biting into my bare back. I was pinned against a ponderosa pine, climbing rope cutting into my chest, my wrists bound behind me. I was naked and the cold had already settled into my bones. I tried to move, but the rope just dug deeper. And then I heard them. Just chatting, like they were at a damn garage sale. Zippers, plastic crinkling, a man's laugh, casual, as if he'd just heard a joke. I cracked my eyes open. The woman in the purple jacket, she looked so calm now, was sitting on a log, and two men I'd never seen before were rummaging through my pack. One of them, a bearded guy, pulled out my half-eaten bag of high-chew candy. He held it up and made a face. "Mango," he said, like it was a personal insult. "Who even likes the mango ones?" The other guy shrugged and tore open a granola bar. My granola bar. The crinkle of the wrapper was so loud in the quiet. I had this pathetic, desperate hope. Bears. They'll smell the trash and come. They'll chase them off. I clung to that thought like a life raft. The snap of a heavy boot on a twig snapped my attention back. They were sorting my gear into piles. Stuff to keep, stuff to leave. My tent, my stove, my water filter. All of it, just inventory. I heard my phone clatter onto a rock. Screen cracked, they didn't care. My world was being divided up, and I couldn't even shiver without the rope burning my skin. I wanted to scream, but the drug and the cold left me so tired, so hollow. I just watched them, drifting in and out, waiting for bears that were never going to come. Then the bearded man looked up, right at me, and smiled. He knew I was awake. He didn't say a word, just smiled and went back to sorting my life into piles. The woman glanced over, her expression blank. Then she picked up my hiking boots and turned them over, checking the soles, like she was pricing them. That's when I knew I was just a thing to them, a thing that would be left behind. I kept my eyes half closed, breathing shallow. I had to know what they were going to do. The bearded man asked the woman, her name was Marie, he called her that, what dose she'd use. "Same as the horse," she said, "just smaller. He'll be out of it for hours." Horse tranquilizer. That explained the cold spreading through my veins. The other guy, younger with a patchy mustache, was wearing my vintage Denver Broncos cap. The logo was faded, but I'd had that cap since college. It looked wrong on him. Sour sweat smell drifted off them as they worked. They called me number 4. Not Ben, not the guy, just number 4. They talked about me like I was a deer they'd tagged. The youngest one asked if they should take my boots. Marie said they were too big for him, but the tread was good. They could sell them. I heard the crack of my tent poles being broken down, snapped into pieces to fit in their packs. You know, it's the little things. Hearing them talk about reselling my used boots, like my life was just inventory. My mind raced for an escape that didn't exist. Maybe they'll just leave and that'll be it, I told myself. They got what they wanted. They're not killers. The lie tasted as sour as the smell from their clothes. But I kept telling myself I'd be okay. They'd take the gear, walk away, and I'd work the rope loose. I'd be cold, but I'd be alive. Just don't move. Don't let them know I'm listening. Then Marie stood up and brushed the dirt off her pants. She walked over to me, squatted down, and looked right into my face. I froze, eyelids trembling. She tilted her head, and for a long moment she just stared. Then she reached out and took my cheap compass, the one thing they hadn't packed, and dropped it on the ground next to my thigh. "Something to find your way," she whispered. "If you get loose." Then she stood, and they all hoisted their packs. The bearded man laughed once, a dry sound. They started down the trail, the crack of twigs fading. Her purple jacket was the last thing I saw before the forest swallowed them whole. And then there was nothing but the silence. The silence was the worst part. No birds, no wind, just the stench of my own blood and fear. I sat there, rope chewing into my wrists for what felt like hours. The sun was sinking, and the temperature was dropping fast. I pulled and twisted until my skin gave way, wet and raw. I didn't feel the pain, just the desperation. Finally, one hand slipped free, and I tore at the knots with bloody fingers. When I hit the ground, I didn't have a stitch of clothing. No shoes, no shirt, nothing but that cheap compass from the REI clearance sale. It was my only lifeline. I knew the parking lot was 16 miles back. I told myself it was just a night hike. Manageable. You do what you have to. One step, then another. You don't think about the cold. You don't think about the rocks slicing your bare feet. I just focused on the compass needle, the rustle of the evening wind, the only sound besides my ragged breathing. The trail was barely visible in the twilight. Every shadow looked like a person waiting. Every snap of a branch sent my heart into my throat. I limped forward, leaving bloody footprints. I mumbled to myself, counting steps, anything to keep moving. The rustle of the wind turned into whispers that weren't there. I was hallucinating maybe, but I didn't care. The parking lot was the only thought that mattered. The compass needle bounced with my shaking hand, 16 miles. Just keep walking. I heard a sound behind me, a scuff on the dirt, and I whipped around. Nothing. Just the dark trail and the endless trees. I turned back, forcing my legs to keep moving. I didn't dare stop. The cold was a living thing now, and I knew if I sat down, I'd never get up again. I didn't walk into that ranger station so much as collapse against the door. Dawn was breaking, and I was hypothermic, barefoot, and covered in my own dried blood. The ranger took one look at me and called the sheriff. They wrapped me in a foil blanket, and the sour smell of the squad car's vinyl seats filled my nose as they drove me back up the trail to find the scene. We reached the switchback, and I pointed to the ponderosa pine, but there was nothing. No rope, no torn t-shirt, no footprints except the ones I'd made stumbling down. The forest looked untouched. The deputy, a tired-looking guy, walked around and then gave me that look, the one that says crazy. He suggested I might have been hiking too long, maybe ate a bad mushroom. "The mind plays tricks," he said. "It happens all the time." I almost believed him. I mean, who's gonna believe a naked guy stumbling out of the woods? I don't even have a scar from the needle. It's like it never happened. They filled out an incident report, number 14 Area 82, and drove me back. I sat in that sour squad car, shivering, clutching the compass they'd found in my hand. The deputy didn't ask about it. The report would later be closed due to lack of evidence. I was just a crazy hiker with heat stroke or a bad trip. But here's the thing. When I got home, I washed the dried blood off my hands and found a tiny pinprick on my neck. It was almost invisible, but it was there. By morning, it was gone. No scar, no proof. I still have that compass. Sometimes I wake up at night, and for a second, I smell pine and rot, and I can't tell if it's real or if my mind is still playing tricks on me. The silence in my house is never really silent anymore.